afternoon. I'm honored to have your attention today. Without that, I would not be appearing before you. Today we're going to overview the philosophy of the Holy Science, the book that inspired this conference, and I believe the founding of the binary research. We'll begin with an introduction and an overview that I believe will demonstrate why religion and physics need to come together. This is the context. Next, we'll look at the spiritual science, where spiritual science aligns with the primary dilemma in today's physics. From there, we'll overview the main principles in the Holy Science, which are spread throughout the book, so it's better to dive into the big picture before we dive into the step-by-step. Finally, we'll walk through the 4 chapters, which Rosetta suggests on the 4 stages of the knowledge. Allow me to start with a quote. Does anyone know where this was written? The kingdom of heaven is within you, and who shall ever know thyself shall find it. Anyone else? Bible? Anybody else? This is literally carved in stone. It's written in hieroglyphics on the Lexar temple. It was reiterated by Jesus in the Bible, but this timeless wisdom is from the Golden Age. The Holy Science was written in Sanskrit 125 years ago this year by Swami Shri and translated and clarified by his key disciples, including Paramahansa Yogananda, founder of Self-Realization Fellowship. As we know Socrates from the writings of Plato, Sri Yukteswar's wisdom is illuminated through the extensive writings by his chief disciple, Yogananda. The Holy Science outlines the theory of the ages, the procession, which is the CPAC, the C in CPAC. Today we're going to focus on the 24,000-year cycle of intuitive realization, rather than the astronomy. This intuitive cycle peaked 13,000 years ago in what's historically known as the Golden Age, followed by a decline in the silver, bronze, the iron, and now a return into the bronze, which began around the year 1600. The cycle perfectly reflects our historical record. Looking back, we find deep ancient wisdom, followed by a decline in the dark ages of strife, and now, most recently, a rebirth, as evidenced by our ever-new inventions of the modern age. This wisdom is a personal passion of mine. Think of it as a primer to the book, but not just to the book, to the scientific and social context of our time. The views I share are mine alone. I do not represent any organization, nor do I have anything to sell. Rather, I ask that you contribute your thoughtful comments, examples, and of course, any corrections. For those who resonate with this material, join me to mastermind the unity physics we're about to discuss. The Holy Science is straightforward to read, just 98 pages, with one very bad illustration, but impossible to comprehend without the context of the Vedas, especially Yogananda's 1,100-page, 2-volume set, The Interpretation of Bhagavad Gita. I'll leave this out here for anyone who wants to see. Thank you. In this little book, the concise description of the true nature of the universe and the essence of soul liberation according to Sri Yukteswar and his key disciples, many of whom have journeyed to this kingdom within. How few people today know there's a heaven within or work to become self-realized? It's in the Bible, right? Yet many Christians hold this concept. How many Christians hold this concept as a fundamental truth? How many know it even exists? Ask them, and I think you'd be astonished. The passage, the kingdom of God cometh, not with observation, but the kingdom of God is within you. To be clear, it's not just Christianity. Every religious tradition has similar reports of where we are and why we are here. Yet, until now, just this past century, we've had no reason to doubt the reality of our everyday experience. So few take this wisdom literally. I had one religious class in college. The professor said, let science determine how, let religion determine why. I've always thought that was a compelling insight, but it's far from the complete picture. Both sides today are in desperate need of fresh ideas and need to look to each other. It's not the unification of the physical theories, gravity, quantum, but the unity of physics with spiritual science that I believe will provide the roadmap to the new age. Together, the how of modern physics, unified with the timeless wisdom, will lead the way to a new understanding of the human condition. The holy science shows the why and the way to the kingdom within. But it's our physicists who are the real heroes in our story today. They've made the breathtaking findings that challenge the very fabric of our reality. Without this hard science, few would seriously question the very nature of the human experience, the sound, the touch, the smell, the taste, and sights before our very eyes. And science and religion continue to talk past one another. Self-realization, this know thyself, is not done with the intellect, but with intuition, this amazing channel that occasionally flashes insights into our everyday lives. To make this journey within, the eye of intuition must be fully open, as Jesus expressed, if thine eye be single, the body be full of light. This is the third eye revered in the Hindu tradition, symbolized by the dot on the forehead and depicted in many ancient statues. Yet, a new vision is also of the essence. With a guiding vision, a map of the spiritual insight, new hope will be infused into the hearts of misery-mad, death-fearing dreamers of the world. That's on page 109 of the Holy Science. And when I mention a page, you typically will be from this book. It's urgent, too, because the spiritual vision we've inherited from our forefathers is far too vague. From the science of religion, it's our vagueness concerning God. This colorless theory fails to bring conviction to us. Absent this vision, few will endeavor to know thyself. Fewer still will resolve to venture into the kingdom within. So let's begin with humility. We are but observers of this great one way within. We are far from the apex of civilization. Rather, we are at the early dawn of a new age. We must discover all that was lost. We are beginners again. Let's review where we are. Sri Tishwar said, people are hypnotized by their environment and cannot see beyond the horizon of their experience. This is precisely where we find ourselves today. To some degree, we're all hypnotized by dark age symbolism and modern day materialism, which does not permit even the discussion of the supernatural. Yet physicists are at the end of their yardstick. It's a dead end. We have not seen a major breakthrough in the foundation of physics for more than 4 decades. Can you imagine? 4 decades. This is according to, forgive me, I can't pronounce her name, but Sabrina Hoffman. She wrote The Lost in Math. Highly recommend. They don't know what to make of their own findings. It's our existence itself that has been proven to be unreal. These are astonishing facts. The observer effect. A particle, excuse me, did I miss something? Sorry, I went ahead. I don't know why they did that. It jumped ahead about 15 slides. I must have done a slide. I guess it's the way to do that. We'll get it. All right, let's see. We'll pass these. That's what I did. I must have slid that forward. Okay. Next. Okay, these are astonishing facts. The observer effect. A particle, and perhaps reality itself, only takes form when you look at it. Otherwise, it's a sea of dancing waves. Light speed is the same everywhere, and nothing can travel faster. Yet when two particles are entangled, there's a non-physical communication that defies the speed limit. Human twins, one traveling at high speeds, will have a far different experience of time and space itself. Hence, the traveling twin will age slower. This suggests that each twin, and perhaps each of us, is in our own time. While time and space may vary, light speed is always the same, everywhere, at all speeds. This clearly suggests that reality itself is rendered from light. precisely as the scriptures say, let there be light. The resulting matter all around us appears heavy and solid, but it's 99.99% empty space. What appears to be solid is just frozen wave energy. Or maybe it's frozen just for us as we observe. Big G, the most universal force, gravity itself, just happens. It's a geometric effect, according to Einstein, or the geometrics may be its effect. Regardless, science has no idea why gravity happens. Yet they've already named the physical particle as its cause, the graviton. You know what? I figured out what to do. Use an arrow. Okay, I don't need the slide. Then there's the Planck constant. It's not a scalar like phi, phi, or e. The Planck constant has units of action. The universe is a constant action, which is energy and time. Always, all of nature's effects can be derived from three fundamental constants: G, H, and C, the speed of light. Finally, there's a black hole information paradox. Information that forms matter falling in a black hole is proportional to its surface area, which is two-dimensional. Mass becomes a shadow of its former self, which suggests that all the matter, the reality we experience, is just a holographic projection. From all this evidence, some physicists have speculated that the universe itself is like a holographic fishbowl projected from its own event horizon. Others that we live in a multiverse, one of many, and or that the universe is a 3D bubble in some vast flatland of strings that vibrate. This is just nuts. Please understand the distinction. It's clear that the universe is holographic in nature. The physics is indisputable. These findings have been confirmed over and over again. It's the attributions by materialists grasping for physical meaning, bubble universes, multiverses, and the like, which is nothing short of wild-ass speculation. But why is this nonsense taken seriously? For the same reason we have gravitons. With few exceptions, physicists claim the physical causality, period. They ignore, indeed shun, any and all metaphysical attribution. Materialists do not accept non-physical causality, with God and consciousness very first and foremost among their dismissals. They contend, indeed indoctrinate our youth, that if gravity's in effect, then surely some particle, this fictitious graviton, must be its cause. Here's the standard model. The particles on your left have been recreated over and over again. That's real science. What we don't know, all the magic in the universe, is attributed to these two fictitious particles on the right, the Higgs and the graviton. Yes, we found an energy blip, and we understand gravitational effects, but all the magic, how the Higgs conveys a feature set to particles, and how gravity creates, or the graviton creates gravity, is a complete mystery. They cling to these particles like a security blanket. Have you seen this cartoon? It nicely captures this current state of affairs. As Lucy indoctrinates Linus with some little-known facts, Charlie Brown asks, where'd she get them from? She says, I make them up. There's a new book, Lost in Math, that overviews the current state of physics pretty nicely. So, in contrast to modern physics, symbolic religion starts with a God story, and its purveyors dismiss any evidence that contradicts their theme. It's not the truth that's sacred here, but the narrative. By symbolic, I mean the religions we all know. They cling to dogma and spiritual icons, unaware of the deeper significance of their own sacred evidence. Religious traditions are like wonderful museums with tour guides, working collection tips while unwittingly presenting their story as the truth. Then they assert they alone are the one true religion, and their believers, those who enroll in their members-only club, are automatically saved through in-person favor. They claim exclusive power to grant admission to some illusory heaven not one of them has experienced for themselves. What audacity! How do they hold such beliefs? It's simple, really. For the same reason we have multiverses, strings, and magical particles. It's the illusion of knowledge by proxy, while completely ignoring outside evidence. It becomes groupthink. There's always safety in numbers. Each branded tradition has an enlightened master who knew the truth through their direct experience, but they're gone. Those left to carry on have no such realization. So it's not a matter of knowing God, or like our physicists, they dismiss God. These people play God, mistaking their own version of the God story for the absolute truth. Like physicists, these faith leaders are deeply hypnotized by a set of beliefs they hold so dear that in the face of scientific evidence or the compelling truth from contemporary saints, they believe their stories still. It's not that they can't see beyond the horizon of their own experience. They won't look. Institutional ignorance is what keeps practitioners, the masses, from seeking truth beyond the symbolism. They all have the whole truth. So why not? Here's the essence of the holy science. You can't just study the map. The journey within is not intellectual. There are no free rides for believers, no red pills or blue pills. You must make this journey yourself. That means you must resolve, you must train, you must climb up the holy stream to the spiritual mountain. And as one of that means, and as one of the great masters, excuse me, you have to be like Christ, Krishna, Buddha, Moses, Muhammad, not just believe in them. As you experience your way to God's presence, then, as the great master said, from his lips, you'll understand everything. So it's time for a quiz. Who made this pronouncement? Truth is no theory, no speculative system of philosophy, no intellectual insight. Truth is an exact correspondence with reality. Who made this statement? Was it a statesman, a philosopher, a yogi, or a physicist? Anybody have an idea? A yogi. Anybody else? Sounds like a physicist, doesn't it? It's a tough call if you don't know, and clearly people know it. Yet, it could have been any one of these, but because they're all seeking truth as an exact correspondence of reality. But this begs the question, whose reality? Whose reality? The trouble is not just that the truth is elusive, but that most of us wouldn't know it if it fell on our lap. So let's take a few minutes for comments, literally 3. I've got this 3-minute hourglass here. And give everybody a mental break as well as me. Yes, I'm going to get a little water as we speak here. Maybe I could get some water. Anybody have comments about what we talked about before? Oh, I have one. Thanks. Speak up. Anybody have comments, questions? I'm certainly not an authority. I am just a messenger. How are we doing?
Good.
Everybody out there? Okay.
Right.
You made it here. What are you talking about?
That's good.
Some of us have been on the road for a while, you know.
I came up from San Diego.
I came from Paso.
Did you? Oh, that's a long drive. Okay, so we'll start up. So the question is whose reality? We just defined the truth as an exact correspondence with reality. This could be the mantra of modern physics. It should be. Humanity holds an abundance of delusional ideas on the fullest authority of the state, science, and religion. We're all hypnotized by some degree or another in one camp or another. So when the truth is an exact correspondence, most often that's as compared to some perceived reality that may be deeply flawed by skewed beliefs, either by materialism or these symbolic God stories. That's why we continue to talk past one another. Both physicists and faith leaders are challenged. Neither story works anymore. But here's the thing, neither story can ever work. Why? Because they each deliberately and systematically exclude vital evidence. Physicists only look for the physical keys to the universe, like drunks under street lamps. And the branded traditions will not look beyond their own narratives. Yet, as you'll see, through the mirror of the holy science, things are closer than they appear. So we're at the dawn of a new enlightenment. The time is now. The ancients have told us for millenniums that we had fallen into the delusion of darkness and death, Maya, and that this is not our real home. That's where physics comes to the rescue. It's amazing to me, really amazing. Every religion speaks to spiritual lights that the rest of us do not perceive. Yet we're surrounded by death and darkness. From our own mortal experience, we know we face death, although most of us live as though we'll never die. We all experience darkness, or at least read news reports of heart-wrenching evils. Death and darkness are common knowledge, widely accepted. Yet for millenniums, we've had no hard evidence to the third and final clue. We've never had any reason to doubt our own existence. Everything seems so real. We've been told on the full authority of the dominant symbolic religions, by popes no less, that we have to die to go to heaven. There is no other way. Only now, for modern physics, are we beginning to comprehend this unreality. The entire universe may be a construct, not as real as it appears. In the language of our day, we live in a holographic universe, perhaps as both the golden age wisdom and modern age masters. They all suggest we are dreamers within a dream. Physical insight number one here. We'll talk about the nature of the show, but physicists will accept the holograph as a real-time projection, so long as there's no God or programmer involved, and it's all rooted in physical causality. Holographic or not, we can't deny what's before our eyes. This is an ongoing show. Look at the universe, look at the stars, look at everything. Insight number two, there are a few constraints that define all of nature. In the framework of a holograph, Planck's constant, h, is sort of like a resolution, like a pixel size. Currently, physicists have distilled three primary forces, the electroweak, the strong, and gravity. And although they believe that somehow the strong force will integrate as well. Regardless of the count, whether it's 2 or 3, there are only a few prime movers. The third insight is these primary forces, whatever they are, remain invisibly hidden. The purpose of particle accelerators is to smash matter into bits and see what's hiding there. It's rather crude, almost Flintstonian. If history records our time as the childhood of man, Man will be a fitting icon for contemporary physics. Taken together, if reality is a holograph, the prime movers are invisibly hidden behind matter, like a projector hidden behind a screen. You can see why physics comes into play. We no longer need blind faith in ancient myth or symbolic religion. After thousands of years, several millenniums, only now, this past 100 years, do we have scientific proof that the universe is not as real as it appears, and may only appear when we look. If these insights hold true, then physics becomes utterly simple. Schrodinger's cat dies or lives, but don't ask the physicist, ask the cat. It's not that some random multiverse, snapped into place just as the physicists begin, as though the whole show is random chance. Rather, the physicists are just tuning into past episodes, like a DVR we're all familiar with. Our viewing experience may have shifted forward in time, but all events take place right on schedule. The show goes on, whether we view it or not. There's no need for wormholes or multiverses. There's just one universe, one show to which we all contribute. Yet the discovery that we live in an unreal holographic universe is just the first step. That's the shock and awe that may awaken a few of us. What now? Why are we here? And how do we get out of here? How do we wake up the masses hypnotized by materialists and dark age storytellers? Thankfully, there's an ancient Vedic prayer written for just such an occasion as we find ourselves in today. It goes like this: Lord, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness into light, and from death to the undying. You see the three elements here? Death, darkness, and delusion. This is not the prayer of the uninformed, some huckster confusing the exit signs with the exit, or some physicist hoping to land in the Goldilocks universe. This is a prayer for humility, a guide for guidance and redemption from this universe, which is not a real home. This is a prayer of a warrior on the verge of a dangerous journey, knowingly lost in the non-reality. It's a prayer for guidance from one knowingly searching for the path back to eternal life. And it's a prayer for redemption, seeking escape from the death, darkness, and delusion. Above all, it's a prayer for love, from one knowing they may not find their way out. Okay, have we all fallen in delusion like the chair of forgetfulness in Greek mythology? If this is all holographic, and we're nothing is real but the actors. And finally, are we in such a deep hypnotic state that, like hypnosis, in need of the hypnotist to be awakened? We are in desperate need of a new model of reality, one that combines the how uncovered in modern physics with the why we are here, the truth that underlies all the great religions. This is the philosophy of religion, the true philosophy of religion. Neither physics nor symbolic religions have the answer. Neither one can solve this alone. Rather, we must unify physical science and spiritual science into one truth guided by the exact correspondence with reality. For that, we turn to the holy science, which I suggest is the Rosetta Stone of our time. So let's take comments again. 3 minutes. Max. Please. Come on, speak up. I'm not alone here. Please.
Can you explain a little bit more about what in physics suggests that we're living in a hologram?
Yeah, good question. I'm a mechanical engineer with an MBA, so I'm not a physicist. I need physicists. If anybody's here to help, we'll get to that in a minute. But it's the black hole math that they've done. They've determined that, through thermodynamics, they can determine the information. And when mass goes in a black hole, the information that forms the matter is proportional to the surface area, not the volume. You would think if mass goes in, it makes it bigger, right? It doesn't. Mass goes in, and it just becomes a shadow of its former sun. Pretty amazing. Does that make sense?
Well, it's transformed from a physicality into some other physicality. We don't know.
That's over my pay grade. Yeah. It could be split.
When you think about it, I'm just thinking of a star, and you think of what it's made out of, and you see how at the event horizon, you see how the gases are literally stripped away and it winds in. So, what happens? Nobody knows.
Well, no, exactly.
It's a transformation of mass into energy or some other kind of thing we don't have words for yet.
Yeah, it could be back to its source.
What about the Pythagoreans?
Pardon?
The Pythagoreans and their discovery of pi, and anybody that was not among them and knew that secret because it showed that the universe was not stable, died.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to Galileo too. He spent a little time in prison for that too.
Okay.
Anybody else have any comments? We have just a minute left too. Please.
I'm just curious, can you give a little, really brief, overview of just this commentary on the
Amazing, absolutely, great question too. There's we found the institution in the monastic order that Yogananda founded, Self-Realization Fellowship. What it does, this talks about the Bhagavad Gita, and he dictated this for hours and hours, and we're told, I wasn't there, in the status of mind, that he actually outlasted his scribes, and the scribes had to keep bringing people in to write this stuff down because he was in the state. So it's pretty incredible, and I use that to understand this. And the reason is, this is the like the architecture. That's the operating manual, and the two work together pretty nicely.
Can you repeat what her question was?
Yeah, she wanted to know what the Gita is, the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah.
Well, no, not just this is this an interpretation?
Interpretation.
Thank you. Just want to make sure we're using, not a translation.
That's correct.
Okay.
Translation is pretty trivial. Okay, we're out of 3 minutes.
Big difference.
This, I nailed this in 90 minutes. I'm trying to make this happen here if I can. Okay, we know Sri Yukteswar from the writings of his great disciple Paramahansa Yogananda. Most famous is known for the autobiography of the Yogi. That's how I found my way to these teachings. I read the autobiography 25 years ago and several times since. It's a great read, touching on many supernatural insights unknown to the masses. What really captivated me were the footnotes that reference the Bible and the subtle teachings of Jesus, which are fully aligned with Eastern thoughts. If you didn't know that, check this out. It's just incredible. What really, and as you may know, Yogananda established a monastic order with centers in Los Angeles, Encinitas, and San Diego until his Mahasamadhi in 1952. Now, I don't want this moment to pass without highlighting the profound act I mentioned just now, the Mahasamadhi. The yogi's final conscious exit from the body. Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda, and other self-realized masters have such control over the life force that they die at will. Yogananda writes of a special mantra for the final permanent exit. But by die, these great masters also mean to shut down the holographic show and to go with him. The metaphor used in the Bible is, I die daily. That's what that might mean. Can you do that? Can you die at will? Do you know anyone that can do that? Our greatest athletes, scientists, statesmen, religious leaders, even popes have no such control over the life force. Self-realized masters like Sri Yukteswar and Yogananda and many others, Jesus, are the real spiritual athletes who have climbed the mountain within. In contrast, the rest of us are mere spectators. The holy science begins with a short treatise on the precession, the 24,000-year astronomical cycle known as the Great Year by Plato. Think about it. Everything cycles in nature, doesn't it? Summer, winter, day, night, life and death. Why not intuition? Why not intuition? Just like the other cycles, there are periods of great intuitive insight, the golden age, followed by decline in the darkness, the iron age. Yukteswar asserts the golden age peaks around 11,500 BC, where humanity could easily grasp the divine and began its decline through the silver, the bronze, and the dark iron ages until 499 AD, when our intuitive powers became so diminished that we could no longer comprehend anything beyond gross matter of creation. Sound familiar? That explains why we don't see it. These dark years dominate our own historical record. Materialism is the elixir that dominates the actors in today's society. We have now entered a new age of enlightenment, the Bronze Age, which just began 400 years ago in 1599 and will expand over 2,000 years through the year 4100 AD or so. We are just beginning our intuitive awakening, but we haven't even hit the 20% mark yet. But look what we've discovered in the first 400 years. Kepler's astronomy, Newton's gravity, Tesla's electricity, Einstein's relativity, and the atomic forces, Planck, Dirac, Heisenberg, and now the Standard Model, which details the wave nature of reality. If the abundance of recent innovation validates the dawning of a new age, then full stop. We must revisit, rediscover the timeless wisdom handed down from the higher age. The ancients knew the spiritual truth, knew a spiritual truth that we cannot comprehend in the dim light of the new age. It's early. It's like pre-dawn and we can barely make out what's around us. The best is yet to come. Our mission today is to piece the truth back together again. We will never find the whole truth in one religion or in science and the fragments of ancient knowledge, or even in the holy science. Rather, we must triangulate it all, unifying non-physical spiritual insight with the physical science to glimpse the truth universally understood in the higher ages. If you think of the Bible as a quick start gun, love your neighbor, do unto others. The deep explorations, as I just mentioned, with the Gita is its operating manual. The holy science then is the architectural framework of the universe and the human condition. This book details the essence of the Vedas, along with the symbology of the Bible into one logical framework, like a Rosetta stone. It was specifically written to unify Eastern and Western thought. In this sense, science with religion. This is the central message in the introduction. And really, among all the different yugas or cycles, we do not see things as they are. We see things as we are. Really get this. This timeless wisdom suggests that we not only are under the influence, drunk with delusion from our dark age past, and the drumbeat of materialism, but that our intuitive realization is just beginning to flow. This means we are decoding the universe not just with a bad filter, but a dim light, out routinely dismissing what we don't understand or agree with. But that's not what I want you all to do today. Let's be clear. This book is about a journey beyond the horizon of our own experience, certainly beyond mine. Be curious, be receptive. Right now, I ask that you all be curious. Just listen to what these great masters say and believe. Be like a mad scientist, trying to grasp the odd beliefs of a foreign culture, but without any judgment. There's time for that later. So let's explore some of the main principles of the holy science. Today, I can only offer a book tour, really a distillation of this wisdom. It would take hours to dive into each section. It's incredible. So let's start with some perspective. The book is also layered. Topics are introduced one chapter and then explained elsewhere. As you'll note from the page numbers I've included as we go along. Let's begin with the central teaching of the holy science. Its prime directive will now illustrate what it means by non-physical causality. The main teaching is that God is love, and love is the path to self-realization, to know thyself. This is from the conclusion, page 97. Through this means only can we be saved from the bondage of death, darkness, and delusion, Maya. That's on page 97, just as we spoke about. Love rules the court, the camp, the grove, the men below and the saints above, for love is heaven, and heaven is love. He goes on to say, it has been clearly demonstrated in the foregoing pages that love is God, not merely in the noblest sentiments of this poet, but as an aphorism for eternal truth. I had to look that word up. In this sense, aphorism means a concise statement of eternal truth. You see, if God is love, like gravity, your love is essential to attract God's love. When there's no mass, there's no gravitational effect, right? Same thing. No love, no attraction. That's scientific. When he says through this means only, that means we must purify our hearts to approach God. There's no other way. This truth has stood for millennia. You may recall Jesus said, only the pure in heart shall see God. That's in Matthew. From the Jewish tradition, only the pure in heart could approach the Holy of Holies. And from Egyptian mythology, only a heart that weighed less than a feather could journey to heaven. Love is the essence of God. So love is the means by which you become enlightened, but how do we start the journey? The prime directive is to question this reality and to endeavor to discover its true nature. It all begins here, exactly where physicists have been digging for the last 100 years. Most everyone believes that everything we touch, hear, see, taste, and smell is the whole reality. What Sritishwar calls ignorance, avidra. While physicists are just beginning to understand the universe as a hologram, Sritishwar has no doubts. Ignorance is the perception of non-existence and the non-perception of existence with a capital E. It's on page 47. God is the only real substance, page 41, and defines ignorance as the perception of non-existence. Maya, thinking all of this is real when it's non-existent. In the dark state of the heart, this is on page 77. In the dark stage of the heart, man misconceives. He thinks this gross material portion of creation is the only real substance in existence, and that there's nothing besides. He says the true nature of the universe is beyond the shared reality. Think about the architectural brilliance here. it's a lot easier to build a hologram than an infinite universe. It just has to look big, right? It's amazing. I've reworded this a bit, but this is the essence. When man, let's see, I think, okay. When man becomes a little enlightened, he begins to entertain topics about the substantial existence of reality itself. So I've reworded this a little bit, but this is the essence. That's exactly what physicists are doing. Teshwar says, in effect, the first step in this journey is to doubt the very nature of this reality. That's precisely where we are today. From doubt comes desire. His heart then becomes propelled to learn the true nature of the universe, and struggling to clear his doubts, seeks for evidence of what is true. Page 79. This is what I call the prime directive. Question this reality, then endeavor to learn the true nature of the universe. Is this just a wakeful state, just a dream on steroids? They had no real evidence at the time, just inference. Remember, the book was written in 1894, before Einstein, before science began to unravel space-time, the nature of space-time. Dreams may convince the very astute, but the rest of us need evidence. So let's put these worldviews into a framework. Here's a matrix with 4 quadrants. I hope it's viewable enough you can make this out. Can you read this? Okay, good. And I'll have it in the room later, tomorrow. You can take a close look. Ignorance simply means the belief that reality is real. That's 99% of the population. These are the death-fearing dreamers who are lost in the show, accepting the perception of non-existence as the whole creation. Or we have doubts and follow the prime directive. To have doubts, you need not comprehend the obscure writings in the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas. You just need to tune into modern physics. This is holographic. They don't know what to do with this or what to make. The other axis is attribution. This is what I call, this is what causes our reality. It's the whodunit mystery. Here, self-created is the flagrant belief in physical causality. That's it. We are, or we are receptive to non-physical causality and look beyond the material portion of our creation. These are the bedrock beliefs that define and constrain the very inquiry into nature itself. By God created, I don't mean the God of the Dark Age fairy tales. Those are personifications. What I simply mean is non-physical causality. Essentially, the belief that love and consciousness play a primary role, that mind creates matter. While I'm calling it God created, that's an attribution. We could easily leave the label off. What's scientific and objective is physical versus non-physical causality. So where do you find yourself? If we live in a holograph, it's utterly amazing, convincing humanity beyond any question of its validity. We're not going to convince the realist. Reality is real. They're fundamentalists in the sense that they believe their own eyes, that this reality is literally real, whether they believe in a God story or not. These are the flat earth thinkers of our time, or what I call flat agers. In contrast, both physicists and metaphysicists follow the prime directive and endeavor to learn the true nature of the universe. Now, after 100 years of exploration, the findings in modern physics are profoundly close to metaphysical belief, except for this one insight, non-physical causality. There's no role for love or consciousness in our physics, which indeed may be the final frontier of science. The goal is to find truth. There must be an integration. The truth must be in exact correspondence with this new reality, the one that physics has shown to be so elusive. We can no longer model with any credibility a God story of non-physical causality that does not include, account, or at least allow for the physics of our universe. We must be able to say with precision, there's one universe, one God. Who is that? So let's take a few minutes for comments. Yes, sir.
Maybe I misheard you, but you said something about consciousness not being found in physics.
No, generally speaking, and that's not every physicist. I mean, Einstein, I had a quote
Well,
from
I was going to say
Einstein.
Max Planck thought consciousness
Oh,
lay behind
yes.
everything.
Oh my God, he did. Yeah, but he also attributed to some physical flat thing or.
Yeah, but no, he was talking about, ultimate consciousness.
Okay.
When he was
Let's-
talking
let's-
about,
let's-
and
let's
then
put it
there's
the
the
other
whole
way.
thing of
Those are
using
I agree.
consciousness to, classic collapsing the state, the wave function, that type of thing. But I mean, there's a lot of, I think, at least in some aspects of physics,
Mhm.
where consciousness really is being given a lot of credit, which I think is wonderful, and actually lying behind as seen as the most fundamental aspect.
I think that's what Rosetta said, behind it all. But it's an exception, I think. When I say physicists are generally materialists.
Well, I was going to say the classic 19th century physics, for instance, physics and the Newtonian physics, and that tends, not Newton himself, but
Right.
I would agree with you, classic 19th century physics, early 20th century physics, outside of some of the early work on quantum physics and quantum mechanics. And that was one of the objections to some of the early quantum work, that it allowed this quote weird thing there that might be interpreted as consciousness.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say a lot of physicists just dismiss that.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
if they believe in God, it's outside their work.
Oh, I'll give you an example. I know some that I've talked to them about this, and they believe in God literally on Sundays,
Yeah.
and not the rest of the week.
Anybody got an easier question?
I want to make one comment.
Please.
David Bohm, the famous physicist, who actually quantified, mathematically explained quantum mechanics. He always said that we will never really find the end, the real understanding of the universe, because it will always be beyond us. There's just no way we can contain it within the structure of what we understand. We're limited. And the other thing I was going to mention is that you mentioned where Sri Teshwar talks about God is the only real substance in the universe. And interesting, the word substance, because in Sanskrit, that this is originally written in, all nouns derive from verbs. That is, any kind of noun or subject being derived from a verb means it's a very dynamic language. And the word substance, in the Rosetta was talking about, in Sanskrit is the word dravya. And dravya derives from the verb root, which drew, which means to dissolve or melt.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
And so the idea of substance being something that just sits there passive, like we're
Yeah.
used to in the Dark Ages,
Yeah.
in Sanskrit, it's something that dissolves, it melts into energy.
Amazing.
So it's a
Amazing stuff.
different way to see it.
Classic, they say the unmanifest creates the manifest. Well, our 3 minutes are up, and there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end. We can hang around tonight at cocktails. So let me get through this so I get everybody off to their room for a few minutes before the cocktail hour. All right. So this one universe, one God, do the math. I'm an engineer, right? Where did I come up with this? Within my guiding expression for over 25 years, I posted this insight back in my wall in Chicago, early 90s. Had no idea of the significance if it hadn't been. Nor had I ever heard of these great masters at the time. Our physicists have done a great service to humanity. They've naturally followed divine directives, and through that have confirmed that this reality is not what it seems. But they've gone as far as they can. There's no role for God, love, consciousness in our physics, with some exceptions. But you're not going to get funded by the Defense Department for doing anything. Research like this. So they cling to physical causality. Yukteswar suggests that the non-physical creates physical effects. All of creation is governed by law, Sri Yukteswar concludes. The principles that operate the outer universe universe discoverable by scientists are called natural laws. But there are subtler laws that rule the hidden spiritual planes and the inner realms of consciousness. It's in chapter 12 of the autobiography. But it's Tishwar being quoted by Loren. So let's all be like mad scientists. Let's appreciate the fact that neither love nor consciousness play any significant role. You like that better?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. A significant role in our physics and discover how they might fit in. Yudhishthira clearly states this. It's not the physicist, but the self-realized master who comprehends the true nature of matter. By such knowledge, Christ was able to restore the servant's ear after it had been severed. That's in chapter 12 of the autobiography of Yogi. Okay. Before we overview the 4 chapters, the 4 stages of knowledge, let's experience, or we can't experience it, let's talk about non-physical causality in a way we're all familiar with. One said to be made in the image of God. Well, who would that be but ourselves? There's no technology that can read your mind. Yet, we can detect brain activity that's physical, but it's impossible to extract the content, the mind stuff we all experience. Well, why is that? Our own consciousness is non-physical, non-material. Despite speculations by materialists, physical instruments will never decode our thoughts because they're not a physical plane of existence, a vibration. I realize that some of you may struggle with this idea and may outright reject it. Beliefs can be like addictions, whether they're true or not. The non-physical part is very subtle, totally overshadowed by the observable. Our bodies responding to a thought, the brain activates, the signaling begins, the muscles flex, the movement results. That's all physical, right? It's just the initiator, the commanding thought, move my arm. That's outside the physical realm. That's consciousness at work. Our physical bodies had better obey, or we would immediately calm down. Well, let's look at physical causality, non-physical causality, which is free will. Human consciousness is driven by imagination and desires, thinking and feeling, conceptions and perceptions. This is our everyday experience. Yet consciousness alone is not causal. Okay? To activate free will, an objective must rise to the level of resolve. For example, thoughts like, I should move my arm. What if I move my arm? They do not result in movement. Only the thought, move my arm, is a command. The vision becomes a directive only once you commit. Until then, it's just a thought, an idea. But who is this you? Okay, by you, I mean your inner being, the decider. Okay? In my model, that's a replacement for the picture on page 28, which I never understood. You are the director, as though you're in a theater production. After hearing from your team, both the external advisors and the internal chatter, and considering your desires, you, the director, decide and then direct your performers to act. You see? The role of the conscious mind in our sense body is to deliver this virtual reality to you, the director. That's the input. The director's job is to resolve, or not. Action or inaction is merely the output, the physical output. So, perceptions come from the physical world, go to the non-physical director, and back out again as physical reactive action. Vision and desire, thinking and feeling are just mind tools. These are inputs and controls, not the cause of our action. Only resolve by you, the director, is the will. Free will is the non-physical causality of everything we do. So vision plus desire simply means you want. That means you want an outcome, which means you, the director, desire a vision, which could be as complex as a new career or as simple as savoring a cookie. Resolve here is indicated by the paren, both what I did was I created a little formula for this. Free will equals vision plus desire in parentheses. The parenthesis is both the focus on the goal and a shield to shield out distractions. Vision plus desire come together as wanting. But so what? We want a lot of things, don't we? Only once you resolve this wanting it, you come go for it. Does that make sense? So, okay, suppose, if I didn't have these, but I actually was, if I had time, I would have done this. Suppose I had a warm cookie up here from an old family recipe. You want it? Okay. Suppose I changed the it to a radish. I still want it?
Yes. and
Some
I know
people
it's-
do.
I know radish is vegan.
There you go. Okay, so, but what would have happened, I would have invited somebody to come up and get a cookie, right? And what would have happened is that someone went from wanting it to go for it by getting up, by speaking to it. When you two asked the question just now, that you went from thinking about it to go for it. And that's what, for that reason, for some reason, the rest of us did not reach that threshold. Maybe the question in our minds was not quite ready. Maybe we're still thinking about it. Maybe it's fear. Maybe you don't want to. So you would examine your thoughts in these circumstances to determine why you didn't reach that threshold. But it is resolve that causes action, not thinking and feeling. That's the cool thing I discovered, or I've been working on. So, mankind is the poster child for non-physical causality. This is not some obscure insight written in Sanskrit. Non-physical causality we exercise every day, all day long. The brilliance of this cartoon was to give these human faculties to the tiger, which we all know they don't have because they're not human random. When my son was growing up, I used to ask him, who's in charge of that, just to drive this point home. I bet I said it 1,000 times. One day he's about 5 or 6, he looks up at me and says, "Hey, you're not in charge of me." I said, "Yes, but I'm Yoda." And then we all needed Yoda to remind us of the force of it. Okay, if we're made in the image of God, and entirely driven by free will, directed will, which I believe, and I hope most of you understand and comprehend and are with me on that. Let's imagine for the moment thy will, the non-physical causality of the universe, asserted by most traditions. Again, let's be like mad scientists. We don't have to agree with this to understand, right? Just get the concept. The idea is that the universe, the physical universe, is the physical body of the Creator. It's the staging of life, the theater, okay? Where the director is the theater, in which we are all but actors. Thy will, then, is the universal consciousness, the non-physical causality of the universe, just as free will is the non-physical cause of our personal actions. Does anyone believe in karma? Anybody? Prayer? Okay, how about miracles? Okay, this is a matter of belief, clearly, but it now has ramifications. The question is the real-time show, this holographic projection, determined or malleable? And does it have a purpose? There's a critical distinction here. Only our reality is always malleable through free will, okay? That's after we're confronted in an experience. We can react to the experience, always. The question here is whether the holographic projection is malleable. Will prayer rewrite an upcoming scene? Does the past actions influence our ongoing experience? Like, if you're a materialist, you generally believe in determinism. You may accept the science that suggests that the universe is holographic, but it's all the random outcome in some probability space. That's what they say, probability space. Everything is determined from physical causes, so karma and prayer can have no influence on upcoming events. Supposed miracles are pure coincidence. If, however, you believe in prayer, karma, and miracles, there must be a mechanism. There must be a mechanism for updates. Okay? This holographic projection itself must be malleable. In spiritual science, the show has a purpose. In part, it is a consequence of past karma, projected in real time by a loving creator. I call this a karmic projection. Karmic because each of us as participants will encounter exactly the lessons we need. Through prayer, we can appeal to thy will, and just maybe the director will intercede for us and make a slight change in the upcoming scene. If indeed we're made in the image of God and we, as director, control our own actions, there just might be a universal director, the decider, behind the karmic projection. Well, let's be clear. In either reality, the random show or a karmic projection, either reality, Schrodinger's cat dies half the time. There's no difference in the outcome. That is unless, through love, we pray for dear little kitty to be spared. This is heavy stuff, but extremely simple. Here's the distinction. It's not just a real-time projection, it's karmic. In the random show, as asserted by physicists, love and prayer play no role. It's all probability. If, however, the show is a karmic projection, we still have probability. If you're a very bad dude, you're probably going to get whacked. If, however, this is the essential distinction between godless physics and spiritual science. The show has purpose. Your actions have consequences. There is a sanity. Human experience is both a reaction and the contribution to thy will, this karmic projection. Free will is nested within thy will. The holographic experience is all driven by non-physical causality, by combined consciousness, both ours and the Creator. Karma is just desserts, essentially tough love, with over time, many lifetimes, purposely molds us all into spiritual warriors. Yet, just look at how close the spiritual science aligns with the physics of our day. Purposeful or not, the physics is the same. The only difference is causality. Let's take questions. Did you have? Yes,
Yeah.
please.
I apologize, I came in late to your talk, I may have covered some of this ahead of time.
Pardon?
But if you're I apologize, I came in late to your
That's
talk. So if you're talking about Shorty Teshwar, then of course you're talking about Paramahansa Yogananda. And Paramahansa Yogananda talks about karma and many facets of it. Among the facets are there's karma of the planet, and that animals who are in the evolutionary cycle, souls, before they become, before the souls end up in the kind of bodies that can appreciate meditation, for example, their karma is all automatic. They don't have karmic sins the way sentient beings that have the ability to have consciousness would have. So animals, even when they're pets, still have some mass karma. Maybe they're becoming a little closer to becoming people or some other intelligent being, and then when they're household pets.
It's over my favorite.
Right. But the planet itself, in Paramahansa Yogananda's writings, it said the planet itself suffers cataclysmic events based on the mass karma of humanity, and that I remember I was reading something a few weeks back where this is during the time of the Spanish Civil War. There were some cataclysmic floods in the Midwest of this country, and Paramahansa Yogananda said that was actually a reaction to the disturbance in the vibration because of the hostilities and the bloodshed in another country. So the teaching, as I understand it, is that your thoughts really matter and your attitude really matters because you're not just influencing your own individual karma, which you are, but you're contributing to the whole rest of the planet and the rest of the sea of humanity that's all interconnected. So when you see things that are happening in the world that are really bad, it's kind of hard to see, from my understanding, where did the source of it happen. But as consciousness seems to sink down into more rank materialism, it seems like, and most people would probably make a really quick observation, that the world is going through more difficult times, and that we're supposed to be in an ascending.
It's not getting better, it's getting worse.
Well, that's the question. So we're in this Dwapara Yuga, right? It's coming up.
Sure.
But yeah, a lot of people would say, sure, so the last 50 years you have to wonder, are you up or down? Because my question was this. So we're in an ascending yuga, and yet a lot of very difficult things, regardless of what side of the political aisle you're on, regardless of what country you're living in, there's tough times for lots of people. And with seems like we're in, so I started their climb, and then we dropped down onto like a local minimum.
I have the answer. It's real estate in California. This is how real estate goes, okay? It doesn't go that way really. It goes this way, doesn't it? As it goes up, it settles. So I'm cool with that. I mean, I don't mean cool with bad
No,
is
but
good.
that's
I'm just saying
Right,
it makes perfect sense. Did you know Lincoln said that of the Civil War?
I didn't remember that, but that was like this.
So, we're gonna move on, because we got a 3-minute limit, that's what our thing is, and otherwise we won't be out here tonight. So, but we have lots of time at the end
Yeah.
to ask questions. Good comment. Okay, so, you guys like Helen and Hobbes? That's my favorite, for example. Here he says, why does the universe always give you a sign after you do it? So, we're going to overview the holy science here, the gospel. Okay, here's the big this is the big picture of the 4 chapters. Okay, the gospel, the highest aim in religion is self-knowledge. But to obtain this, knowledge of the external world is necessary. Page 8. The goal. All creatures, from the highest to the lowest, in the lake of creation, are found eager to realize 3 things: existence, consciousness, and bliss. The procedure. The third deals with the method of realizing these 3 purposes in life. The 3rd chapter. The revelation, the 4th chapter, discusses the revelations which come to those who have traveled far and are very near their destination. Very near means they're not quite there. You might have heard the Sanskrit expression, Chidananda, page 51. This is the essence of the gospel. This is the first chapter of the book. From 2 come 1. From Sat, the only real substance, comes the 2 primary movers that create the universe. Omnipotent force, which is power and joy. Ananda. This is the repulsion that projects the universe. This is the holographic show. Omniscient feeling is knowledge and love. This is the attraction that draws every portion of it, the universe, towards divinity. So we can now contrast the second physical insight here. Physical insight was we just have a few prime movers. You remember they discovered 3, okay, or maybe 2. According to Tishwar, these prime movers are omnipotent force and omniscient feeling, source of power and joy, knowledge and love. These are both elusive to modern physics because they're non-physical. This is why they can't be found with the microscope, telescope, or one of their particle accelerators. They're not physical. We know love is not physical. That's a whole experience. Next, the holy science outlines the mechanics. From these 2 become 4. Inert nature combines with omnipotent force, Om, the word, and its manifestation creates time, space, and atoms. This is how the holograph is projected, according to Sri Tishwar, all together as one, not some fishbowl from the outside. Maya, these atoms in mass are called Lord's illusionary power. This is the cause of creation, which in today's language means that this is all holographic and unreal. Page 24. Omniscient feeling projects consciousness in us as individual souls, which shines on the darkness mind to attract every portion towards divinity, which is why love is the only way back to the Creator. Page 25. Atoms are the throne of spirit, the Creator, which shining on them causes this universe, but keeps spiritual light out of our comprehension. Page 24. Tishwar is saying it's not just the prime movers are hidden behind matter. He's not saying it's the prime movers are hidden behind matter, which is real physical stuff, but that matter itself is the illusion. It's all a hologram. There's nothing here. It's all an illusion. It's all in our mind. Okay? The universe is an unreal projection, and we as individual souls are projected within it, not from some far-off event horizon, as suggested by physicists, but right along with the matter itself. This is why the kingdom is within and not up there somewhere. You can see how close we are to uniting physics with spiritual science. Here's all three incidents. A random projection or not. A random projection, or it has purpose. Physical versus non-physical causality. And matter versus matter being an illusion. It's just the bridge from the non-physical to the physical that remains elusive. Herein lies the challenge of unity physics. From these two prime movers, how do we get the universe we experience? If any of you have a deep interest in this, help me mastermind the physics. I'm a mere engineer, a real physicist. Let's talk following, or I'll post the slides at unityphysics.com when sometime next week, but I had to get a chance to get them. Now let's return to the human condition. We talked about the holograph, the universe, the forces that create all this. The individual self, under the influence of omniscient feeling and omnipotent force, like iron filings in a magnetic aura, forms the dual mind, consciousness and feeling, and projects the ego, jiva, the son of man. Ego, the idea of separate existence. That's on page 27. In this chapter of the Gospel, you'll find a concise description of the 24 principles, basic principles of man, the 7 spirits of heaven, and an overview of enlightenment, and the 5 koshas, or sheaths, that keep the spiritual light out of all of our comprehension, not just from mankind, but from all forms of life and nature. While we're on the slide, I wanted to mention the projection of Maya, which we're attracted to, and we're attached. We're attached to Maya, is fought by the attraction within. Actually, it's like this: the attraction within and the projection out. This is how consciousness gets spread and projected within our own being. So here's my new model to replace the picture on page 28. I find the 5 sheaths the most illuminating, because these are precisely what separates the 5 kingdoms of nature, inanimate, vegetable, animal, mankind, from the divine or angelic. Animals only sense monas, that's the sense mind. Plants only prana, the life force. I find this to be a profound yet plausible explanation for the nature that surrounds us. This means all of life is both a projection and a comprehension of omniscient love. We are one in this sense. All life is an expression of love. Now let's go down the rabbit hole. The miracle of life are these graduated levels of the Creator's omniscient love. Yet this miraculous shine also illuminates inanimate matter, which may not have consciousness or feels its effects. Inanimate matter cannot receive or comprehend the spiritual light, but reflect it. Page 37. According to Sri Tishwar, this reflected omniscient love falling on inanimate matter creates gravity. They are one and the same. Here's what he says. The action of love. Under the influence of omniscient love, the attraction, the atoms, this whole visible universe exists exposed to us. Let's see here. Omniscient love that creates life. Here it is. Being attracted to, these are the atoms now, I mentioned them just before. The atoms being attracted towards one another come nearer and nearer, taking this ethereal, gaseous, fiery, and liquid and solid form. Thus, the visible world becomes adorned with suns, planets, and moons, which we call the inanimate kingdom of creation. That's on page 36. He says, love creates gravity. Put another way, gravity is simply the reflection of omniscient love on inanimate matter, which cannot comprehend. Think about it. Is this some crazy idea, love is gravity? Both love and gravity only attract. Okay? There's no opposite forces there is with electromagnetics. They're both omniscient, everywhere. Both are elusive to our physicists. When Yukteswar says that inanimate matter cannot comprehend but reflects, that only precludes inanimate matter having consciousness, not physical form. If this is correct, then love is the link that binds physical matter as gravity. The other link, of course, is the karmic projection itself, manifesting the heavens from the non-physical mind of the universe and sustaining our own physical creations. Free will nested within thy will, the background universe. There may be, these two forces may be the mysterious Higgs and graviton particles suggested in the Standard Model. Rather than these fictitious particles, it's the own light show that's the Higgs, and it's omniscient love gravity that creates the physical universe. The atom's outer coating on page 36. Heavy stuff, but here we are. We may live in an unreal holographic universe subject to death and darkness, but it's filled, indeed created by love. If only we would tune into that, rather than losing ourselves in the show. Now, let's turn to the spiritual mountain within, the path to enlightenment, according to Yukteswar. We may live in a hologram, but there's a reason we're here. There's a reason we're here. In the words of Brother Ananda, we're here to get out of here. One quick round of questions. Then we'll finish this up. There's just one section left. Please. Comments, by the way. Use your comments, not questions. I don't have answers.
I'm here from Ireland, and in Ireland a word for name is Anam, A-I-N-N. And the word for soul is Anam, A-N-A-N. And the things that I work with every day are animals, you know, and I've worked with them most of my life up until now. And at this point in my life, I don't regard them as animals, but just as different forms of consciousness. And I don't think that their consciousness is any better or any worse than our consciousness. To the human being, as a form of consciousness, much has been given. From the human being, much is expected. And with regards to the truth and reality, that's a subject that's covered in great depth in this A Course in Miracles, this new sort of post-Christian religion, or whatever you might want to call it. And it seems to bring together a lot of the themes that you've been talking about from the Holy Science book, repackaged in the
Very nice.
21st century.
And I wanted to comment on you said that there's not a lot of difference between animals and humanity, correct? I mean, this is what he's saying, is there's one omniscient love everywhere. We're just aware of all levels. You know, we have all 5 levels in our view. We know from everything down. This is the intellectual mind, the sense mind, the life force, the physical. That's 4 below. The one above we can't get to. We'll talk about that next. We're not there yet. We're not at the high age, clean heart stage. We're not there. But that same love flows into the animals, flows into the plants. They're unaware of the free will and the intellectual level of the animals. Okay? Get to the plants, and they're not aware of the mind. They're not at that. It's just blocked. So it's not that the love is different, and that's how rocks get gravity. They just don't. They don't know. They feel, I want to be close. This sounds crazy, but it's. The physicists have no answers. 40 years, by the way, there have been no breakthroughs in 40 years. This might be a breakthrough. So we have another minute. Make it quick, and we can do more at the end, of course. I'll stick around one. Want some cocktails next.
I just want to clarify, so,
Yeah.
you were saying that like inanimate objects don't understand consciousness or
They don't comprehend.
comprehend.
They reflect, but don't. That's what Yukteswar says.
Okay, because I was just thinking about
Talking about
the instance, no, changing the structure of wood, for example.
that there's something to that a lot.
Right. So I guess that illustrates it.
Let's see, okay, we have 9 minutes left, so let me finish up and then we'll, all you want. You can take me apart, throw me down, whatever. So, all right, the goal. Remember the first chapter was the gospel, and that really talked about where we are, why we're here, trying to understand reality. The prime directive is to challenge this reality. Once you realize we're living in a dream, you start thinking, what's the truth? Where are we supposed to be? Where's home? That's the essence of the first chapter. Then we'll go to the next 3, starting with the goal. The goal, all creatures from the highest to lowest in the link of civilization, even animals, as he mentioned, are eager to realize 3 things: consciousness, existence, and bliss. These are the 3 goals. In their attainment, there are 3 phases to the journey, and as outlined in the clarified in the Holy Science, in 5 stages of the human heart. So keep this simple. Pardon? So did they go out? Okay, cool. I'll try not to touch it. But if you keep the simplicity in mind, the rest of the book will begin to make sense. There's 3 goals, 3 phases, and 5 stages for the heart. So this is the opening paragraph from the goal. The very first awakening comes with the realization that we are blinded, forget who we are, and endure endless suffering so long as we're lost in the show, and keep drinking and cooling. This is the prime directive, knowing we're here to get out of here. And I think I found an official sponsor. What do you guys think? Did you read that? Mind Haze IPA. We first awaken to discover we live in a holographic dream. Then we aspire to get back to our real home. That's the motion. There's a great scene in The Wizard of Oz that captures this essence. The good witch says, she's always had the power to go home. But why don't we believe? The scarecrow asks, well, why didn't you tell her? The good witch says, she had to find out for herself. It's a beautiful scene. I would have run the video, but didn't get the time to do it. It's only 30 seconds. And by the way, that's not in the book of the Wizard of Oz. That's something that Disney added to it. Yeah, I read the book. It's not in there. But this is really cool stuff. Okay, Yukteswar asserts that we all must rise to a spiritual awakening. We must climb, and it's not just divine attunement, love, which we talked about, but inner resolve. Here's some of the language in the book. Rises up, fixes his attention, directs, withdraws, climbs back, struggles, withdraws, lift up, abandons the idea of separate existence. You see the inner resolve there? It takes both a steely will and divine attunement. So that's what it means we must climb. Let's return to our spiritual warrior. Lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness into light, and from death to the undying. The 3 goals are inherent in this quest. Our warrior is seeking all 3. The experience of bliss, the perception of spiritual life, and the undying soul realization. The metaphor of the mountain was inspired by the idea that there are many paths, but the view from the top is the same. The paths up the mountain and the mountain itself are invisible, but so is love. So is gravity. Yet we all know the real, we feel their effects. The procedure, this is the next chapter, reviews the principles of the climb. If we rejoin our spiritual warrior, we'll see that that ancient prayer also illuminates the 3 goals, but indicates the 3 phases of the journey. The climb can only begin once we turn away from this holographic universe, awaken to this as a holographic unreality. Phase 1 is back to the being. Phase 2 is back to the soul center. Phase 3 is back to the source. These are the three phases of the journey expressed in Christianity as born into water, born in the Spirit, and of course the Holy Communion is ultimate. Decision 1, seek truth. This entrance to the internal world is the second birth, page 78. This begins with the prime directive and culminates when you are born into water, literally baptized or absorbed in the holy stream of divine sound. Holy water is just metaphoric for the only divine sound. It's not that there's water inside that you're following the stream. It's on page 76. Yet this is what symbolic religion doesn't understand. This is only the beginning of the journey. It's just the breakthrough. Back in your warning. That just means you're inside. The first glimpse of the mountain. You haven't even climbed it yet. Okay? This is where you climb. This is the beginning of true bliss. Decision number 2 is to seek escape. His heart wholly abandons the His heart wholly abandons the idea of the external world. Page 82. Man rises, no longer reflects but manifests spiritual light. Page 84. The second phase begins when you fully commit and culminates when you reach your soul self. You no longer reflect light, but now manifest spiritual light. This is the death of the ego and the resurrection of the soul. This is the realization of true light. Decision number 3 is to seek unity. Comprehending his self as nothing but a mere idea, resting on a fragment of the old light, he sacrifices himself to the Holy Ghost. Page 43. Abandoning the idea of separate existence, he becomes dead or dissolved in the universal Holy Spirit. Page 85. The third phase is an act of surrender, realizing you are nothing but a mere idea, resting on the fragment of the old light. You merge into source and become one with the real substance. This is the essence of true existence. Remember, I'm dying, back to light, and back to the source, from death to undying. Being thus victorious over the powers of darkness and ignorance, man becomes one with God. Page 94. Knowledge of evolution, life, and the dissolution that leads to complete emancipation from the bonds of Maya, delusion, beholding the self in the supreme self, man gains eternal freedom. Page 95. Once we've scaled the mountain within, we come to understand we are but a drop on the shores of the great lake of life. To stand up as a son of man, we must dive in and become one with the Creator. This is the essence of true yoga, of a true yogi. Yoga means unity, just as the Holy Communion is the ultimate goal of Christianity. There's a stone totem at Göbekli Tepe, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it right, but you must see it. This 10,000-year-old figure nicely depicts these 3 phases of realization. First, we have the childhood man. You can see that. There's a little toddler holding a jar. Okay? This is shown as the infant infatuated with the best lion. Then, there's a coming of age, depicted as a growing boy in the middle. Rising above duality, there's 2 snakes, which also suggest the rise of the Kundalini. Finally, the man is standing up as master of self. In the Bible, this is symbolized by Jesus in the 3 days of resurrection, without the touch of mind. Okay, here's a pictorial of meditation. The idea here, by the way, it's all being available tomorrow. You can take a look at this close up. But we have the unpure heart, and the director is this, the circle of buzz in the middle is now rising, right? But still a reflection. You notice the little green That's the reflection of the director from the producer. The producer is creating the soul. Through the purity of the heart shield, you as ego become one with the soul self. So what's happening here is that the director becomes one with the soul. The ego becomes one with the soul. It's the death of the projection, but certainly not the death of you as the being. Then you penetrate the spiritual eye, born in the spirit, and begin to manifest light. And then finally, ultimately, you abandon the idea of separate existence, become one with the universe. I'll have this out in the posting room so any of you can take a closer look. So last, let's look at we looked at the three goals: bliss, consciousness, and existence. We looked at the three phases: seek truth, seek escape, seek unity. Finally, we come to the 5 milestones, essentially the graduations towards a pure heart. They are the dark heart, which is prevalent in the dark ages; the propelled heart, which can arise at any time. It's just beginning to awaken now in us. It's like the early dawn, you can barely see what's around you. The steady heart, which is prevalent towards the end of the Bronze Age. The devoted heart, which is prevalent in the Silver Age. And the clean heart, which is prevalent in the Golden Age. Even in the Golden Age, the spiritual eye might be within view. You are born risen up, right? You're there. You can see the eye. But you have not penetrated. Even with a clean heart, still reflecting spiritual light, man rises to the kingdom of God. That's on page 84. Think of this as being born with a black belt. Yes, you're at that. Yes, but there's still levels to attain. There's many levels of being blind. It's essential to recognize that these ages, called yugas, are just the default setting for humanity. Human beings at any age can transcend duality, become God-realized masters, as Jesus did in the darkest days, and as did Ruteshwar and Yogananda in the Bronze Age. It's up to you whether by free choice of your mind you will liberate yourself. That's out of the Gita, page 1183. This book. Okay, the revelation, this is the last. When at long last we come to know thyself, we are no longer subject to the rigidities of time and space. There's much more detail in the Holy Science, of course, but let's end with a quote from Yogananda. These words are at the end of a lesson, the universe, God's magic drama. All things in the universe are only workings of the relativity of God's consciousness. When you know this through your own realization, you will be free forevermore. Only the non-physical self can become one with spirit. Only love can reunite with love, the source in communion, and be released from this bondage, never in theory or by mere belief, but through our own realization. As we look back at the inquisition of Galileo for asserting truth, we smile at the naivety of the church and its flat earth thinking. Today it's our materialism. Years from now, we may look back and say, to think, we used to believe all this was real. That's what I have.